For 5 centuries, one book has been banned from pulpits, burned in city squares, yet whispered between kings, generals, and modern CEOs. It doesn't promise kindness or moral comfort. It promises survival. Niccolò Machiavelli's The Prince strips away illusions about human nature. From Renaissance courts to Apple and Tesla boardrooms, its ruthless lessons still shape the hidden rules of power, reminding leaders that influence isn't granted by ideals. It's seized through strategy and nerve. 1. Machiavelli, From Exile to an Undying Legacy. Niccolò Machiavelli was born in 1469 in Florence, a jewel of the Renaissance, but also a battlefield of rival factions. Behind its painted frescoes and marble domes, knives waited in the dark. Florence was a city where a friendly handshake at noon could turn into an arrest by nightfall. Machiavelli grew up in that tension. For more than a decade, he served as a diplomat. He bargained with kings and popes. He watched mercenary captains sell their loyalty to the highest bidder, then vanish when the winds changed. He saw mercy answered with betrayal. He saw weakness ground into dust. These weren't stories to him. They were lessons written in blood and broken promises. When the powerful Medici family clawed their way back into power, Machiavelli's world collapsed. They accused him of conspiracy. He was arrested, tortured, stripped of rank. When they were done with him, they left him in the countryside, exiled, humiliated, irrelevant. Out there, among the vineyards and mud, he kept his mind sharp. He wrote letters, studied history, and played out the moves of great men on a mental chessboard. And then, in a small farmhouse outside Florence, he began to write The Prince. It wasn't a plea for sympathy. It wasn't a sermon on morality. It was a cold, precise map of power. How to win it, hold it, and use it before it's ripped from your hands. He addressed it to the same Medici rulers who had ruined him, hoping knowledge might buy him a way back. They never called him back, but the book outlived them all. Centuries later, the prince still whispers in boardrooms, war rooms, and campaign buses. Machiavelli's exile didn't bury him. It sharpened him into something permanent. In losing everything, he wrote the most dangerous handbook on power the world has ever known. 2. Virtù and Fortuna, Boldness and the Flood. Machiavelli said Fortuna is a river. Most days it runs gentle. Then one winter it swells, breaks its banks, and tears down whole cities. You can stand there, hands in your pockets, hoping the water stays low. Or you can build levees before the clouds roll in. Virtù, courage, cunning, nerve, is the dirt under your nails when you build. It's not luck. It's work done early, when no one is watching. Cesare Borgia understood. He stitched together broken lands with charm and steel. He smiled at dinner, then struck at dawn. His world was knives in the dark, and he didn't wait for mercy. Mercy, he'd seen, comes too late. Fast forward 5 centuries. Kodak owned film. It owned memories. But when the digital tide began to rise, it hesitated. It trusted yesterday's river. By the time the water reached its chest, the banks were gone. Netflix and the tech upstarts didn't wait. They built fast, staked claims, and let the flood carry them forward. Fortuna doesn't care for your plans. It doesn't stop to ask if you're ready. It moves, wild, sudden, unforgiving. The quiet hours when nothing seems urgent, that's when Virtù matters most. That's when you stack the sandbags, sharpen the blade, and set the meeting no one thinks is needed. The message is simple, cold, and permanent. Opportunity doesn't wait for the hesitant. The river won't stay still because you're afraid to move. Build now. Move now. or watch the current take everything. 3. Loved or feared? Machiavelli didn't hesitate. If you can't be both, it's safer to be feared. Love is fragile. Fear sets boundaries. He wasn't asking rulers to become monsters. He warned that fear must never turn into hatred. Hatred breeds plots. Hatred burns through walls and guards. History keeps the receipts. Dictators who ruled with terror, Stalin's purges, Ceausescu's secret police, saw their empires crack when the fear curdled into rage. They held power until a single night when the crowd no longer trembled. Then the statues came down, the firing squads changed direction. But fear, handled with precision, can steady a hand. Abraham Lincoln held a fractured nation with a hard resolve that wasn't cruelty. Angela Merkel faced crises, the Eurozone collapse, waves of migration, by combining discipline with a quiet humanity. They were respected because they didn't bluff about consequences, but they didn't humiliate their people either. Firmness earned trust. Modern philosophers push back. They argue fear alone can't sustain authority. Societies ruled only by intimidation rot from the inside. Trust leaks away. Creativity and initiative die. In time, fear makes people reckless. They have nothing left to lose. Leaders who confuse dread with loyalty often mistake silence for support. Machiavelli saw people as they were, not as we wish them to be. He knew loyalty built on affection can vanish overnight. But he also knew a prince who breeds hatred invites his own ruin. The art is balance, to be clear about lines that must not be crossed, to enforce them swiftly, but never to humiliate or degrade. Even in today's offices and boardrooms, the lesson stands. A manager who demands respect through consistent standards will outlast the one who bullies. Fear without hatred anchors authority. Fear with hatred is suicide. Power is not about shouting louder or smiling wider. It's about holding the line, quietly, firmly, while leaving space for people to believe in you. 4. Illusion and substance. Machiavelli said people judge with their eyes, not their hands. You don't have to be merciful, you only have to look merciful. Appearance can buy you time, open doors, win trust, but it's a fragile currency. 5 centuries later, nothing has changed. Elon Musk uses Twitter storms and stage reveals to craft the image of a fearless reformer. Companies splash green campaigns across billboards to calm an anxious public, even as their factories belch smoke. Optics soothe, distract, and delay. For a moment, the crowd believes, but illusion alone can't hold the weight. A photo op doesn't fix a broken supply chain. A viral tweet doesn't turn a shaky product into a revolution. When reality presses hard enough, masks crack. Kodak once posed as a titan of film while digital photography crept under its skin. Enron projected invincibility until the numbers were too rotten to hide. A wise leader understands the stage, but invests in the foundation. They use symbols and stories to steady the crowd, but make sure the machinery beneath can carry the load. They know perception can steer the storm, but only real strength can survive the flood. Machiavelli wasn't praising deceit for its own sake. He was warning that in the theater of power, every act has a backstage. If you fake virtue but can't deliver results, the applause will stop, and the same audience that cheered will tear the set apart. In politics, business, or culture, people crave stories more than facts. They will forgive a hard truth if you show competence. They will forget a promise if you show results. Illusion is a tool, not a shelter. Build the stage, light it well, play your role, but make sure the ground beneath it won't give way when the lights go out. 5. Cruelty at the right moment. Rebuild quickly. Machiavelli was clear. When hard measures are necessary, take them once, fast and clean, then rebuild. Dragging out pain only deepens wounds. A CEO who delays layoffs for months poisons the whole company. Fear spreads. Rumors grow teeth. Morale rots from the inside. Better to act in a single stroke. Make the cut. Announce the plan to recover. Give the survivors a future to work toward. It hurts, but the wound can heal. Slow bleeding never does. He warned, too, against relying on mercenaries. In his time, they were hired soldiers who could vanish or betray. Today, they're temporary contractors, consultants, or shaky alliances. They might fill gaps, but they don't carry your core. They don't bleed for your banner. When the storm comes, they scatter. Strong power is built from within. A leader invests in people who share the mission, not just the paycheck. Loyal teams weather storms because they believe the fight is theirs. Outsourced strength is rented strength, and rented strength leaves when the rent isn't paid. Even in smaller battles, managing a project, leading a department, the same rule holds. Address problems early. Don't let them fester. Make one hard cut, then start the rebuild. Delay creates chaos. Timid leaders think they're sparing feelings by postponing pain. In reality, they stretch suffering across more hearts and more time. Machiavelli wasn't romantic about cruelty. He saw it as a tool, not a habit. Cruelty used well stabilizes. Cruelty dragged out destroys. Act, then heal. Build your walls higher, your foundation deeper. People will follow a leader who moves with clarity, even through hard decisions, because clarity is mercy in a harsh world. 6. When fortune turns, adapt or be swept away. Power never lasts forever. Rome believed its walls would stand for eternity. Kodak thought film would always be king. Nokia once owned every pocket and palm. They all slipped under when the world shifted, and they didn't. Machiavelli compared fortune to a river. Calm in one season, raging in the next. If you wait for the flood to build your dam, it's already too late. He wasn't telling rulers to panic. He was telling them to prepare before the water rises. The bold seize moments when others hesitate. But boldness without calculation is just recklessness. Fortune rewards courage and foresight in the same breath. A smart leader knows when to charge and when to pivot. Think of Blockbuster ignoring streaming until Netflix carved out the future, or once mighty empires refusing reforms until revolution swept them away. The pattern doesn't change. Hesitation kills, arrogance blinds, and time always runs out. Adaptation isn't glamorous. It's not the speech or the parade. It's quiet meetings in back rooms, hard conversations, and early moves no one notices until they matter. It's stepping off a sinking ship before anyone else admits it's sinking. Clinging to the past is easy. It feels safe. But Machiavelli's warning is cold. Safety is an illusion. The world shifts under your feet, whether you acknowledge it or not. Leaders who pretend otherwise end up relics. To endure, you build channels before the flood. You read the wind before the storm. You make changes while the crowd still thinks you don't need to. Power is never a permanent gift. It's a temporary loan from fortune, and fortune always collects. The leaders who survive are those who move first, bend without breaking, and see the wave before it crests. 7. Legacy. Clarity over comfort. When Machiavelli lived, the prince was cursed, burned, and condemned from pulpits. 500 years later, it sits on desks in boardrooms, war rooms, and campaign buses. The world that damned him now quotes him. Many call Machiavelli the patron saint of schemers, the father of manipulation. It's an easy label, but it's lazy. Political historians point out he wasn't praising cruelty for its own sake. He wasn't writing a hymn to evil. He was stripping the velvet off power so leaders could see the machinery beneath. He wanted rulers to understand the world as it is, harsh, shifting, unforgiving, so they might defend their people instead of losing everything to naive ideals. The lesson unsettles because it's too familiar. We still want to believe virtue wins on its own. We still hope fairness is enough to hold a nation or a company together. But history keeps breaking that hope. Empires fall, democracies backslide, heroes are betrayed. Machiavelli's voice cuts through the wishful thinking. Face the world's ugliness, or the world will break you for your blindness. His challenge isn't comfortable, it isn't meant to be. The prince isn't a lullaby, it's a cold mirror. It asks a question most would rather avoid. Will your moral ideals survive contact with real power? Or will they crumble when the storm comes? That's why the book endures. Not because it celebrates cruelty, but because it refuses illusion. Clarity is harder than comfort. And in politics, business, or life, only clarity keeps the walls standing when fortune shifts. Machiavelli didn't write to console. He wrote to prepare. 5 centuries on, his words still do. Closing. Machiavelli's challenge. The prince endures because it cuts to something permanent in us, the hunger to control our own fate. Power, whether in a nation, a company, or a family, obeys rules that don't care about comfort or fairness. They're hard, cold, and often cruel. Machiavelli forces a question most of us dodge. If the crown landed in your hands tonight, what would you choose? Morality or power? It isn't an easy choice, and that's the point. His words remind us that ideals alone don't keep walls from falling or enemies from moving in. If you want to dig deeper into the hidden laws that shape history and leadership, subscribe. Here, we don't just tell stories of the past. We pull apart the gears of power, the psychology of leaders, and the survival lessons Machiavelli only began. Share this video. Leave a comment with your choice, to be loved or to be feared. In the end, power doesn't wait for your comfort. It waits for your decision.